You know, it's funny. Money really does have its own language. And like any language, if you don't speak it, it can feel like you're standing on the outside of a really important conversation, right? Well, today, we're going to change that.
I mean, you've been there. You're hearing the words, you're seeing the headlines, maybe you're even in the room where it's all happening, but if you don't know the key terms, it's all just noise.
You can hear everything and understand absolutely nothing.
So think of this explainer as your personal dictionary, maybe even your Rosetta Stone for the language of wealth. We are going to break down the core vocabulary you need to know so you can go from just hearing the conversation to actually understanding it.
So here's our game plan. We're going to tackle 5 big ideas. First up is equity, what it actually means to own something. Then we'll get into leverage and compounding, which are kind of like the superpowers that make ownership so, well, powerful. After that, we'll look at what all of this actually produces, cash flow and scale. And at the end, we're going to tie it all together so you see the whole picture.
Okay, let's dive right in. The first, and you could argue the most important word in the language of wealth, is equity. This is the concept that's quietly sitting underneath pretty much every single discussion about building real, lasting value.
At its heart, equity answers one super simple but really profound question. When you look at a business, a property, any system that generates value, equity just asks, what piece of it is actually yours?
So here's the formal definition. Equity is the ownership of a piece of something that produces value. Now, this is so crucial. We're not just talking about having money. We're talking about owning the systems, the actual machines that generate that money.
And in the real world, this pops up everywhere, right? It could be shares in a public company like Apple. It might be a percentage of a local business you started with a buddy. It's even the part of your house you truly own after you account for the mortgage. Or in the startup world, it's those stock options you always hear about.
Let's put some numbers to this to make it tangible. Imagine a software company is valued at $20 million. If you own 50% of it, your equity is worth $10 million. Now notice, you didn't earn that as a salary. You own a share of the entire machine, and its value is your value. And this is why it's such a massive mindset shift. See, most of us operate in the world of income. We trade our time and skills for a stable paycheck. But the world of equity is a completely different game. The motivation isn't just stability, it's growth. The focus shifts from the hours you're putting in to the long-term value of the asset that you own. Okay, so you have ownership. How do you make that more powerful? Well, that brings us to our second word, leverage. If equity is what you own, leverage is all about how much impact you can have with it.
Think of leverage as a force multiplier. It's using other resources, other people's money, technology, or even other people to get a result that's way bigger than what you could do on your own. It's how you break that direct link between 1 hour of your time and 1 hour's worth of results.
The classic example is financial leverage, right? Let's say you buy a property for $500,000, but you only put down $100,000 of your own money. You're using the bank's money, that's the leverage, to control a much larger asset. Now, let's just say the property value goes up by 10%. A 10% increase on $500,000, that's a $50,000 gain in value. A pretty solid return. But here's the magic trick. What does that 50 grand mean for your money? That $50,000 gain was on your initial investment of just $100,000. That is a 50% return. And this just shows you the incredible power of leverage. It took a modest market gain and amplified it 5 times over for your personal investment.
But it's not just about borrowing money. Technology is a massive form of leverage. You can build one piece of software and it can serve millions of customers. Same goes for media. You create one video that can be seen by a global audience. And of course, people are leverage. A business owner with a team can achieve way more than they ever could alone.
So let's move to our third concept. We have ownership and we've multiplied our effort. Now we introduce this quiet, patient force that makes wealth grow exponentially over time, compounding.
The mechanics of it are beautifully simple. Your returns start generating their own returns. So you invest $100 and you earn 10%, now you've got 110. The next year, you're not earning interest on that original 100, you're earning it on the full 110. It's a small difference at first, but this is where time becomes your secret weapon. And that's the secret. Compounding doesn't grow in a straight line, it grows in a curve. It's almost unnoticeable for years, just slowly creeping up. But then that curve starts to bend, and the growth just becomes explosive. Patience is the key that unlocks this whole thing. Now what's really cool is that this applies to so much more than money. Your skills compound. The more you learn, the faster you can learn new things. Your knowledge base compounds, and your relationships compound. creating these incredible networks of opportunity. Small, consistent efforts in any of these areas, they lead to massive long-term results.
So we have an asset that's growing, but what does this wealth-generating machine actually produce? What comes out the other end? And that brings us to two final critical concepts: cash flow and scale.
Cash flow is simple. Does this thing pay you now? It's the dividends, the rent, or the profits that turn your wealth on paper into actual income you can use. Scale, on the other hand, asks a different question. Can this system grow bigger without costs growing at the same rate? Scale is what allows a software company to add 1 million new users without their costs going through the roof.
All right, we've defined all the key terms, we've got the pieces on the board. Now let's put them all together and see the full blueprint for how these concepts work together to build a true wealth-generating machine. It all starts with equity. You have to own a piece of the machine. Then you apply leverage to multiply your effort and its output. Over time, compounding takes over, accelerating that growth into a powerful curve. A well-designed system produces cash flow, paying you consistently, while scale allows it to expand far beyond your personal limits. That's the language in action.
By understanding these 5 concepts, you're not just an observer anymore. You have the vocabulary to analyze, to plan, and to act. You don't just hear the conversation about wealth, you become part of it.